Hello everybody and welcome to Darren Augustus Plays, and today we'll be playing something a little different. Now typically on my channel I typically play games like Fear and Hunger and other horror games and stuff like that, or just kind of random indie games and stuff like that. And this is also an indie game, but this is a little bit different. This is more of a political game as opposed to a horror game. And these are actually the games that I tend to play in my spare time. I don't usually play games like Fear and Hunger and horror games like Darkwood and stuff like that. I usually watch other people play those, but now I'm kind of getting into the hang of playing those games too. Anywho, today we'll be playing a game called Suzerain. Now, originally I wasn't going to play it on the channel. It was in my wish list. I just, saw that it's going to have a demo coming out at such and such a time or whatever, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle. And I did see a little bit of the gameplay for it, but then I started playing it and I really came to enjoy it. And I think the main reason why I came to enjoy it is because you don't typically see political games like this. Now, this is made by Torpor Games. I believe it is also published by Fellow Traveler. But yeah, you usually don't see political games like this where you actually play as the president and stuff like that. The only thing I can think of that really does have a game like that is like Democracy 3. But even then, it's not a story-driven game or anything like this where you're playing the leader of a fictional country. But it also reminded me of a choice of game that was supposed to be in development, I think about a year or two ago. It was called United We Stand, and it was basically about where you would be either in a communist party or a fascist party. Eventually the developer got kind of uncomfortable with the suggestion of either side and having to depict the horrors on both sides of that. But the cool thing about the game was that you could either kind of be all the way to the left or all the way to the right. So, and Suzerain seems to be like this too. Again, I've played through the demo once before, and you can kind of see, you can either be like in the middle, or you can be a little bit more to the left, even further to the left, or just straight up communist. Same way on the right. You can turn around and be on the right or center right, and you can be alt-right, whatever. But you can seem to have just about any political persuasion. And now, if I'm not mistaken, I think you're supposed to play over 4 years. But there will be different things that are happening in the process, different things you will have to take a stance on. I think so far I've played leaning more towards the communist side, and I think I've played also leaning more towards the fascist side. Again, I just love stuff like this. You don't see stuff like this at all unless you play games like Hearts of Iron. Again, it's more of a military strategy game, so it's really good to see some actual political games coming out. So anywho, I'll stop running my mouth and I'll get into it. And I am so sorry if I butcher some of these names, because I'm not good at some of these names, and I apologize right off the bat. So anywho, let's start a new game. You are my enslavement and my freedom. You are my flesh burning like a raw summer night. You are my country. Nazim Hikmet Ran. Now, another nice little thing about this game too is if you ever played, I think it's Freeman Guerrilla Warfare, you can actually kind of decide what your character's upbringing was like. Now, I don't know if there will be any reflection upon these things later on. I did see somewhere on the Steam forums where if you make certain decisions, there will be one decision later on about whether you chose to sacrifice time with your wife and your kids in order to put more time towards your work, or if you decided to, spend more time with your family. That's going to have some impact later on. So all these choices are going to have impact later on. So for instance, it says right here, you open your eyes in this world. You came from a wealthy family in the city of Lachavin, middle income family in the city of Holsord, or impoverished family in the city of Dare. And I'm probably butchering all of that. But for instance, if you come from a wealthy family, you already start off the game with some money. And that's the other thing about this game. You can take bribes and things like that. You can be as corrupt as you want to, or you can try and be as righteous as you want to. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to try and find a balance. So for this playthrough, I don't think I've played a wealthy family yet. I think I played a middle income family. So I guess I'll just kind of, well, yeah, I haven't played a wealthy family, if I'm not mistaken. So, no, yes, I did. I did play a wealthy family. I'll just play in the middle this time. Your parents named you Anton. As the only son of a diligent civil servant, You lived quite an ordinary childhood. Life was not bad. You were lucky enough to attend a well-known public school, but frequent fights broke out in the Rand family home. These made you feel uneasy. The years passed. During a history class at school, the bell started to ring unexpectedly. You heard a loud commotion outside. As everyone tried to figure out what was going on, the principal announced a historic revolution. The kingdom was no more. The Republic of Suzerain was born. You did not fully understand. You were happy that you had the day off, or you were somewhat worried. Yeah, I'd probably be happy that I just had the day off. After graduating, you passed the university exam with high marks. You had the opportunity to choose between several studies. You chose law at the Hosord State University, economics at the Lechaven Business School, history at the Dare University of Culture. Actually, when I went to college, when I originally went to college, I was studying political science and psychology. So, and eventually I was going to do politics. I wanted to be a political advisor and things like that. So I'll choose law. During the first year, you attended a lecture with David Whiskey. He was a well-known diplomat from the foreign ministry and the son of the president. After observing the hall in silence, he explained how the Supreme Court is obstructing justice in Suzerain. He stated that laws should be applied fairly, and that even members of the Supreme Court are subject to the same laws. You agreed in principle, you questioned what you were taught, your only concern was passing the exam. So, the world of Suzerain seems to be fictional, but you'll notice once we get into the game, there's a lot of parallels to certain other countries and things like that. Now, it's also going to be very interesting once we get into the game because there is a codex, and that's one of the main reasons why I want to play this game so bad in full. So I'm going to say I agree in principle. Soldiers entered the campus in the evening ahead of the first election. Many were in shock as the uniformed men created a security cordon and started arresting the teachers. A group of students started gathering in protest. Along with your best friend, Peter Vector, you decided to protest with the students or avoid any confrontation. I'm going to protest with the students. One of the officers made a loud announcement that echoed through the campus. General Lutheran declared martial law in order to restore the administration. Please stand back and disperse to your rooms. You joined the students that slowly marched towards the large group of soldiers. Suddenly, the soldiers charged. A student fell and was trampled as everybody started running away. You held your ground or you ran off. I would hold my ground. The soldiers beat you relentlessly. It was a gloomy year. Again, we're going to try to be a bit of a strong person this time around. So, the arrested teachers were replaced by those that promoted conformism to the state. Hosord turned a blind eye to the things that were happening. You didn't want to stay idle and decided to join a human rights group, a student council, a political debate group. Actually, it wasn't a political debate group when I was in college. I haven't done a student council yet, but I think that goes more towards if you want to be on the political side. I'll just be a human rights group. The group heavily protested against the deteriorating human rights situation in Suzerain. You contributed in thorough discussions on how to protect and expand freedoms. In one of the meetings, Peter introduced you to one of his friends, Monica. You were immediately attracted to her intelligence, her beauty, her diligence. I love intelligence. You know, beauty is nice and so is diligence, but I really like intelligence. The politically charged environment led you to join the Red Youth, the Socialists, join the Young Swords, the Nationalists, or stay away from any political organization. So again, you can see where you can be either very far on the left or you can be very far on the right. Or you can just kind of stay out of it and try and draw into the middle, or even, you know, just try and segue onto certain things. And you'll see once we get into the game that there's a lot of choices that I think you're going to be able to make once you actually get into the game, and it's going to have a lot of replayability, and I can't wait for it. So for this one, I played a little bit of the Socialist, but I kind of stayed more towards the center left, I guess you could say. But I'm going to go all in on this one. So I'm going to join the Red Youth. The radio relayed that the communist general Ricard surrounded Lutheran and his troops, demanding their surrender. They refused and heavy fighting broke out across the country. You just couldn't believe it. The army was fighting amongst themselves. Sutherland plunged into chaos. Ricard's counter-coup caused some instability in the country, but compared to fascist Lutheran, he was a real socialist. This convinced you to participate in a support march. You were chanting, "Freedom, equality, and solidarity. Workers of the world unite. Bring down the fascists." I'll just say freedom, equality, and solidarity. You were marching under the protection of Ricard's soldiers. The students opposing the coup gathered a few hundred meters in front of you. Many nationalists were among them. You knew something was going to happen. I'm going to stay. Again, we want to play as somebody who's going to actually stand around and, fight for the things that they're believing. And so not just saying stuff and then hiding. There was a massive clash between the two sides. Soldiers began to beat the students. Tanks started rolling forward. In this chaotic moment, you saw a young girl about to get run over by a tank. You ran to save her, or you warned her. But you couldn't reach her in time. You never forgot her face. The clashes escalated into a full-blown civil war. The horrors made you isolate yourself for a while. Monica helped you cope, and love grew between the two of you. However, it was a difficult time for love. The chaos must end. The charismatic Colonel Tarkin Sol orchestrated a sudden coup and brought an end to the chaos. He wrote a new constitution and restored stability. The people saw him as a savior. He formed the United Sutherland Party and ran as a presidential candidate. In the first ever elections, you voted for the United Sutherland Party. Sure. USP won the election by a large majority. After graduation, you kept seeing Monica and noticed her interest to marry. However, a letter arrived from the military calling you to fulfill your compulsory service. It was time to fulfill your national duty. A devastating civil war broke out in the neighboring country, Wayland. The distinguished Major Losov Lankia ordered you to lead your squad on a border patrol mission. It was a very cold winter night when you began marching out of Gumarin Outpost. You could see your breath. After several hours of marching through the snowy hills, distant noises were heard. Visibility was too low to confirm the source. The squad crawled forward in formation and found a spot to observe. A group of refugees had made it beyond the border fence. You escorted them back or let them slip through. Now again, I'm not sure how these are going to affect you later on, but again, we're going to be more forgiving towards certain things. So I'm going to say we're going to escort them. No, we're going to let them slip through. Surely I can get away with that. I don't think I ever chose that in one of my choices. After the patrol, Major Lankia arrived with anger and immediately relieved you of your command, calling you a disappointment. One of your squad members had reported your actions. After several months of scrubbing the floors as punishment, your duties ended and you went back to civilian life. You and Monica decided to share your lives together. After receiving the blessing of her parents, a ceremony was held in Hosord. During the same year, you worked hard to secure a high-paying job at the governing United Sutherland Party. It was much more difficult to start your career on a good foot because of the refugee incident, but you still managed. Working for the ruling party was the easiest path to power. The financial compensation was too great to pass. It was the best opportunity to change the country for the better. Again, I want to care about the things that I'm doing, so I'm going to say it was the best opportunity to change the country for the better. You became the legal assistant to one of the more experienced members of the assembly. You worked long and hard, studying late at work and going through hundreds of pages of legal documents. You were climbing the ladder. Things were also looking up for the country as the massive economic boom continued, and people were the happiest they had been in decades. Election time came and it was decided. President Tarquin Sol was elected once more. I'm probably going to say that 30 different ways. The ongoing legal battle between the Justice Ministry and the Supreme Court put you under a lot of stress. But your significant contribution to the legal case triggered an invitation to meet President Tarkin Sol himself, who offered you a key position. You were to become the youngest member of Assembly. You accepted right away. As the youngest MP, it was difficult to connect with the influential inner circle. You needed allies, so you brought Peter as your right-hand man. The birth of your son, Frank, provided a brief moment of joy and relief. You sacrificed work to spend time with your family, or you sacrificed family to improve your position in the party. Now, from what I remember so far from what I played, I don't think there's too much of a difference dialogue-wise between these two choices, but that's also because I was a little bit more nicer to my wife, I think, in most of my playthroughs, so I'm not sure. But I am going to sacrifice work to spend time with my family. During your absence, Peter found trustworthy contacts and strengthened your position in the party. At the same time, President Sol increased his authority over the years. His growing ego started to cause strife within the party. The cracks began to show. President Sol barely secured a majority in the election against the opposition leader. Over the past year, people were growing discontent with corruption and the worsening quality of life. Meanwhile, calls for a united Sworderland Party Congress became louder as leadership struggles started to brew. You watched from the sidelines, kept supporting the president, or joined the internal opposition. Well, I am not a very political guy as far as like the scheming and the backstabbing goes, so I'm just gonna support the president. The contender for party leadership was Ewald Alfonso, a reformist and talented business magnate with a growing popularity within the party. You were trying to secure votes for President Sol, who noticed your loyalty and approached you with a lucrative deal. You had a meeting with him. The president offered you the position of Ministry of Justice and Law in the next government if you backed him in the upcoming vote. I accepted. The party Congress was nothing short of impressive. The banners of the United Sworderland were decorated in every possible spot. Thousands of influential political figures, lobbyists, and benefactors gathered for this turning point. The voting for the party leadership began. You voted for Tarkin Sol. You voted for Ewald Alfonso. Unfortunately, Sol lost the leadership vote to Ewald Alfonso with a small margin. During the Congress, Sol announced his retirement from politics. The system he had established were to stay much longer. His achievements wouldn't be forgotten. You were happy that Sol was finally leaving, were troubled by the departure of Sol, didn't care about who was in charge. Well, I'm going to do my work either way, so no, I don't care. A month later, your daughter was born. Monica named her Dina. She motivated you during a tumultuous period in the party. The general election was approaching. The United Sworderland Party was under the new leadership of Ewald Alfonso. You joined the party effort and campaigned for him, did your best not to help him. Sure, I campaigned for him. It's what I do. During the general election, the main opposition leader was embroiled in a sex scandal with his secretary, diminishing their chances. The extensive privatization program proposed by Ewald Alfonso secured an election victory for the United Sworderland Party once again. Over the next years, you did your best in order to make Sworderland a better place, tried all that was necessary to climb up the ladder, dedicated yourself to the party and its success. I will do my best in order to make Sworderland a better place. Yeah, I care about my country. The presidency of Ewald Alfonso saw many reforms, but was followed by serious economic recession. The other parties announced their bids for the 1953 election, but the affair system hampered all opposition's efforts to win. You thought that your party couldn't survive another crisis, were worried about the economic recession, worried that your reputation would be tarnished along with Alfonso. I was worried about the economic recession. Together with Peter, your presence in the USP grew, and you became the face of a new wing in the party. You effectively took over the leadership as President Alfonso lost control of the country. The moment to make a move had come. You blamed Alfonso for the crisis on television, bribed and extorted Alfonso's inner circle, advised Alfonso to step down. I'll advise him to step down. I don't think I've done that yet. He didn't take your advice seriously and started to reshuffle his cabinet, but most of his inner circle abandoned him. Your diplomatic attitude made the party vote you in as the leader. Following this, you announced that you would be running for president in the general election with Peter as your running mate. It was your turn. After visiting every city and town during the campaign, you made a speech on state television. You promised to enact democratic reforms or preserve national values. I will enact democratic reforms. The people are tired of empty promises. We need fundamental change in our government, in our institutions, and our government. A solid and transparent democracy awaits us. Brothers and sisters, a new constitution and a new age is upon us. The broadcast ended. On election day, millions went out to cast their votes. It was time to face the truth. The first week of 1954. Alright, so now we're actually finna get into the game, and now you can see that you can start promoting certain ideas. Now you can change these later on, and again, I haven't seen too much of a difference from if you choose to say things here and then you change your mind, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be a thing. Now I have encountered certain instances where if you choose to say, let's say you say promote planned economy, then the characters that you run into will bring that up when you do talk to them, that you said that you were going to do this and now all of a sudden you change your mind. So I'm assuming that later on that's going to cause some issues if you try to change your mind. But anywho, we'll get into it. Anton Rain has made many promises to the people of Suzerain in order to gain their votes. These promises won't be easy to fulfill. They must be considered very carefully. However, as the game progresses, you can always abandon your promises and suffer the consequences. Suzerain's economy started with a planned doctrine, but after the market reforms of Ewald Alfonso, the country found itself in between two different economic systems. So with this one, you can either promote free market, which is of course what we have here in the United States and other parts of the world, or you can have a planned economy, a command economy, if you will, which is more like China and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna go with the promote planned economy because again, we lean more towards the left and we were a part of the Young Socialists. So let's do a planned economy. And there's also another reason why I want to do this, but it has more so to do with once you start getting into the diplomatic part of the game. Let's see, as far as diplomacy goes, Suzerain lost diplomatic influence in the last decade. We could renew our trade with our old ally Agnolia or sign a new agreement with our western neighbor Wayland. Now you can pursue new partners or strengthen old alliances. Now I believe this is something that's actually going to be changed a little bit in the final game, because I think it was some confusion about this. But because I believe that what this kind of boils down to is if you choose to go back with your old alliances, there's another country, there's one of the superpowers in this game who is basically not America. And there's another superpower who's basically not the USSR. So you can choose, if you choose the old alliances, I believe it's you leaning more towards the US and, you know, their allies. And if you choose the new partners, it leans more towards the USSR. So I'm going to choose to, or the not USSR, I guess you could say, pursue new partners. Immigration. Immigration in the last decades has caused tension among the populace. The country is unsure whether to tighten or relax immigration laws in order to tackle the issues. Relax immigration or tighten immigration. Again, I already got in trouble for immigration, so I'm just going to go ahead and double down on it. Relax immigration. Now we'll move on. Okay, so now you have to get to your actual budget, which I'm pretty sure, again, is going to cause problems later on down the road. And I am notoriously bad with this. I cannot tell you how many times I died in games like Power and Revolution and stuff because I couldn't manage the freaking budget. There was one time I actually did, but then I became tired and stuff like that. Maybe I'll get into that one other day. Anywho, let's see. Health. Since the 1940s, the difference of service quality between urban and rural hospitals is getting worse, and the average life expectancy has dropped. So And let's just go down the list. Education. The lack of schools, teachers, and even classroom equipment in certain areas cause massive gaps in the previously robust education system. Law and enforcement. Crime has increased, pushing law enforcement to their limits, while judges at the courts deal with a huge backlog of legal cases. And the military. The military protects the country from hostile threats, and while some see it as a massive financial burden, others argue it is a critical deterrent. Now, if this was just me playing, I probably would increase the military, because you'll notice about Suzerain is that Suzerain is in kind of a fucky position. So, to put it lightly. So normally I wouldn't decrease the military, but in this particular case, I will, because I want to use that to try and boost some of these other services and whatnot. So I'm trying to help our populace. I'm hoping that when the final game actually comes through, that I can be very diplomatic and hopefully gain some allies to try and defend me from outside influences, because you'll find that there is a bit of a bothersome neighbor, to put it lightly. So I'm going to increase the health, education, and law enforcement. Now, I could just maintain the budget for the military, but for right now I'm just going to try and decrease that, and you'll see the reason why later on. Your promises will be remembered, and they will have consequences. Are you sure about your decisions? Yep. Well, not really, but 2 weeks have passed since we won the election. And now I was about to be sworn in as the 4th president of Suzerain. Thousands were watching the inauguration ceremony and cheering my name, Anton Rain. The die was cast. The die was cast, and there my story began. In the distance, the Maroon Palace stood on top of the famous Hill of Pride. I had no way of knowing what the future awaited me there. I looked at my family. My son and daughter, Frank and Dina, were next to Monica, my wife. Her eyes were glimmering with pride. Then I turned towards the key people who made it all possible. Of course, each individual was promised an important position in my cabinet. As my thoughts slowly faded away, the reality of the situation dawned on me. Orso Hawker, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, was awaiting me. The time for the oath has come. I'm ready. Please repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will respectfully execute the office of the President of Suzerain, and to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the people and the Constitution of the Republic of Suzerain. You may now deliver your inauguration speech, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Hawker. Now, in certain parts of the dialogue, you'll see that there's this blue highlight. What you can do here is you can click on it, and it has a codex. And this is another thing I really like about this game. It's basically like Wikipedia. Like, if you see all these little blue highlights, they connect to other little parts of the game. So this deals with Orso Hawker, who's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. You see Supreme Court is highlighted right there. You can click on it. It gives you detail about the Supreme Court and, you know, what's been going on in the country and basically what it is. It has a lot. It just has a lot of detail in it. There's a lot of things you can look at. So if you go over here, this is the main homepage of the codex. You can look at your cabinet. You can see all these people that are a part of your cabinet, including your vice president, so on and so forth. You can look at your family. You can look at the assembly. Let's see here. Of course, the Supreme Court. There's the two people there. These are presidents of other countries or whatnot. There are some other state figures that you can look at, and just famous people throughout your country. Business people you can look at who you're going to come in contact with and you're going to hear about. And they're also all connected to this story in some way or another. And of course, just other people in general. And it doesn't end there. There's the history of things that happen in the country and certain things. I haven't even read some of this stuff. It's so much that you can actually read. There's important events that turned around and happened. I think one of the biggest things that you're going to hear about is the Century of Revolutions, which basically You'll hear it come up a few times, but it basically led to the situation that you're in right now in the country and throughout the world too. There's ideologies and like solism and Malinism. I think that's Malinism. Now, if you actually read through it, it's communism. That's what it is. But you'll notice some kind of, I guess you can say, you'll notice some similarities to real life things or whatnot. Most of the countries that I've seen on here, they kind of parallel to some real life country that you can kind of be like, oh, that's basically this or whatnot. So, but yeah, that's the codex. And that's one thing that I really, really like about this game, is that it has a lot of detail. It has so much detail in it, and it has so much that you can sit here and read. I actually played through the game once, and then the second time I played through, I think I sat here for about an hour just going through some of the story beats and some of the little side things that you can do. But it's a lot. It is a whole lot. Now if I can get this menu to act right. Again, this is a demo, so there are some few bugs and stuff like that. Okay, so now it's back. There's also locations throughout the country. There's cities and stuff. So just it's a lot. It is a lot. And normally I would be more than happy to go through all of this, but I'll just try and stick to some of the main important ones. The main real important ones that you have to worry about are, as far as countries go, if I can find it. Ah, here we are. There are two countries that you really have to kind of pay attention to, and it's basically Arcadia and the United Contana. Arcadia. The Republic of Arcadia, commonly known as Arcadia, is a constitutional republic situated in the western half of Marcopa and considered as a superpower of the world. Arcadia's capital is Ventry City, a global city which is regarded to be the financial center of the world. It is currently led by President George Walker. Republic of Arcadia was founded in 1823 after the overthrow of King Jonathan the 12th by Arcadian revolutionaries, which started a period of conflict and revolutions in the world called the Century of Revelations. At the end of the century, Arcadia emerged as the global superpower, which expanded its influence by promoting Arcadian capitalism to all corners of the world. Arcadia relies heavily on its military power and has been involved, oh god, I lost myself there for a second, involved with many military operations and security pacts around the world. A highly developed country, Arcadia became the world's largest economy by nominal GDP at the start of the 20th century. During the period, many Arcadian companies rose to the most profitable and largest in the world. The funding of the Arcadian universities transformed them into the world's best education centers, and Arcadian people earned various political freedoms that the world had never seen before. Arcadia is currently locked in a fierce global ideological battle with United Contana. Both powers are in a race of influence around the globe. Arcadia has strong presence in the West, but has been slowly growing their influence in the further corners of the world, most of the time in a conflict with United Contana. While some view Arcadia as a beacon of freedom that enlightens the world, others see it as an oppressive government set out to enslave other countries, and recent reports of torture camps and unethical use of force to interrogate prisoners of war had caused major political problems within Arcadia. An international outcry was contributed to the latter ideas. Recent reports of torture camps and unethical use of force to interrogate prisoners of war has caused major political problems within Arcadia, and international outcry. Arcadia also experienced high levels of inequality between rural and urban areas. There are more underdeveloped land in Arcadia than any of the countries in the world. It is home to the most remote regions of the western north, as well as central Marcopan desert. The nation has arguably the strongest economy in the world and average civil rights records with very good political freedoms. Arcadian people enjoy the low unemployment levels and higher purchasing power than most of the world. It has recently become the center of the consumerist culture. It is the founding member of the Arcadian Treaty Organization, otherwise known as ATO. Surely haven't heard of that before. which was created to counter the influence of communism and United Cantana's military capabilities. It is also a member of the Organization for Mokopan Economic Development, OMEC, and a permanent member of the Alliance of Nations. So yeah, Arcadia is basically the United States. if you didn't really get that. So yeah, it's basically a member of the United States. As you can see, they even have certain things like the Arcadian Treaty Organization, ATO, which of course here, you know, in real life, there's NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, sorry. And of course now you have the kind of USSR parallel to it. So, and of course there's a Cold War. And then of course you have the other country that they're beefing with, United Cantana. United Cantana is a federalist socialist republic situated on the continent of Cantana and considered as a superpower of the world. It is the union of multiple socialist republics spanning Cantana. The country is a one-party state governed by the Communist Party, with Quito as its capital, and is led by Chairman Leon Malinev. Again, I'm going to be butchering all of this, so all right. Let me catch a breath here and move this up a little bit. United Cantana had its roots in the 1907 revolution with the revolutionaries of the Trotsky, led by Leon Malinev, and overthrew the Cantanian government, which had replaced the autocratic regime of the king during the century of revolutions. In 1910, after a civil war ending in Trotsky's victory, the United Cantana was formed by a treaty which united the Cantanian, Transcantanan, Kiovian, and the republics of Cantana continent. Malinev replaced the market economy with a command economy, which led to a period of rapid industrialization and collectivization in United Cantana. During the period, rapid economic development resulted in dramatic improvement in the average standard of living, particularly in urban areas. The country saw major reforms under the ideology of Malinevism. It promoted the idea of permanent revolution abroad and supported social revolutions in nearby states with early stage capitalism. United Cantana grew their influence around the world with Malinevist ideas and rose to become a superpower of the world. United Cantana is currently locked in a fierce global ideological battle with Arcadia. Both powers are in a race of influence around the globe. United Cantana has been growing their influence around the world by supporting less fortunate nations with their problems, supporting revolutionaries and unions abroad. They have already influenced several revolutions to occur, which led to the founding of the new Marco-Milanevist nations. The nation has a very strong economy and an average civil rights record with few political freedoms. Thanks to education reforms and heavy promotion of sciences, they experience a technological golden age and currently are considered to be ahead of their rivals in the world. The continent is very resource rich, and the United Cantana uses this as a means to spread their influence around the globe. It tends to export natural resources more than any nation in the world, and in exchange sets up military bases in strategic countries. It is a founding member of the Cantanan Security Pact, CSP, which was created against the growing threat of capitalism and Arcadian imperialism. It also is a permanent member of the Alliance of Nations. So again, once again, you have the basically allegorical USSR to the United States and NATO and everything else. I also remember I was playing what was it, China Mouse Legacy, and there was another game that was also made by Kremlin Games. Russia has their own pact during that time. I can't remember. It's not my best part of history that I know. But yeah, so again, this is just one article, and you can see just how much detail is in it. So again, I love that, and it's enough to I could delve into this. I could probably do an entire video just on the different countries and stuff like that. So, but yeah, there are many countries and many people in the game that you will see that's kind of, they have some type of parallel to somebody in real life. Anywho, back to the game. I was supposed to be getting sworn in. So, I had a speech to make. Dear citizens of Suzerain. The crowd was very eager to hear what you would say. The idea of unity, the current dire situation, or change and hope. Change and hope. You, the people, have chosen. Together we will bring prosperity and reform to our nation. It is a time of hope. It is a time of change. Together we prevail. The issues that plague us. If we stand together, we prevail. In the past, there have been times of survival, times of conflict and economic hardship too, but whenever we stood together, we prevailed. Change now, not in the next decade or years, today. Hundreds of thousands cheered. They were shouting my name in unison. I felt the responsibility, the power, and the burden all at the same time. And I'm gonna raise my fist. I raised my fist in the air, which triggered a huge applause. I took a long look at the people of Suzerain to burn this moment into my memory. One of the presidential guards came by to notify that it was time to leave. I made my way to the leading car in the motorcade. The presidential state car was a jet black Cadillac with flags of Suzerain above the front headlights. Next to it, a man was holding the door. Sergei Wolkner. Hello, Mr. President. Still under the effect of the speech I made, hearing my new title made me smile. If you allow me to introduce myself, I'm Sergei, your new driver. Nice to meet you, Sergei. It's an honor. He respectfully bowed his head before opening the car door, gesturing inside. I entered the car. We will be heading towards the palace. The motorcade began to move. On the way, Sergei proceeded to explain his duties as a driver. As minutes passed by, I found myself lost in thoughts again, barely paying attention to what he was saying. He suddenly made a gesture towards the now closer palace. Isn't it a beauty? The Maroon Palace. He was right. Under the sun, many maroon-colored domes of the palace were shining brightly, so much so that I had to look away. And of course, you can look at the Maroon Palace and see what it is over here. Every time I look at it, I am reminded of my duties to this nation. So do I, Sergei. It is the beating heart of the nation, after all. Well said, Mr. President. The car drove past the majestic gates and continued uphill to the entrance and stopped at the front doors. Sergei got out of the car and opened the door for me. Have a great day, Mr. President. A Morgana was core. He referred to the famous Swedish phrase with the times of the revolution. A Morgana was core, Victorin Sisda, which meant morning will come, victory is close. I made my way upstairs through the extravagant corridors of the palace. Marble and engraved wooden finishes decorated the interior. My footsteps echoed in the colossal halls. The guards bowed their heads in respect as I opened the massive doors to my office. Alright, now we're into the actual map. So again, there's a lot of things on this map besides just the codex and everything else in between. You have the news articles here, which again, these things will play an impact later on to the game. You have your economy, your budget, your wealth. Down here, of course, you have yourself. You also have the country overview, political overview, notes, and the settings, of course. I don't think I've actually ever looked at the country. Oh yeah, the country overview basically gives you kind of like a simple breakdown of where each particular category of the country is at. So right now, you see the laws, and this is the current situation and the active policies you are promoting. So right now, we have a security package laws. The security package written during the term of Tarkin Sol gives security forces greater powers to arrest and prosecute. And then we are a presidential republic. Suzerain is a presidential republic, which means the executive president is separate from the legislature. Suzerain is a presidential republic ruled by the president. While the president holds enormous power, the Supreme Court is seen as the place of power by many. The Supreme Court has a right to veto the president and currently holds significant influence over the assembly. The current constitution was written by Tarkin Sol. It is regarded by many as an authoritarian, and increasing demand for reform has been unsettling the old guard, the traditionalists from Tarkin Sol era, or as some call this, soulless. So yeah, that's basically kind of the crux of the game. Like there's a ideological struggle going on in the country. There are some, of course, extremist ideologies as well, but there's also a kind of a overall idea that the Supreme Court has a little bit too much power, and you need to do something about that. Now, you can go about this a lot of different ways. You can go about it by either just kind of accepting it and trying to use that Supreme Court's power to your own advantage. You can go about it by working with different allies, or you can even go about it by working with certain extremists and see how that goes about. So, again, a lot of ways to approach everything. The current situation, the Blutish problem. Swordaland has a complicated relationship with the millions of Blutish people living inside its borders. The Blutish people don't get the same treatment as Swords. Court backlog. A significant court backlog is putting strain on the legal system, causing delays, disorder, and even unintentional injustices due to late responses by judges. Judicial rivalry. The Supreme Court and the Ministry of Justice are in a political, legal, and constitutional rivalry about who has the higher legal authority. Extended security laws. The current security laws from the Seoul era are extending the rights of law enforcement, negatively influencing human rights. Semi-proportionate elections. Some improvements to the elections were made previously that did reduce but not eliminate the unfairness of the election system. Some separation of powers. The Powers of Swordaland has some revisions on the streamlining of the separation of powers, but not enough to satisfy all. Some human rights. Some human rights are respected while violations still exist due to the extensive law enforcement powers. So yeah, you will encounter certain moments like that. I think if I remember, the Blutish they basically were a minority population in the country, and they lost the right to even have a political party. So that's become a thing. And now you have a Blutish extremist group that is trying to start problems, start ethnic problems, and that's become a problem. And I'm sure that's going to be something that you can address at some point in time. There's also a fascist group that you're going to have to deal with, and they have an issue with the Blutish people. So that's a thing. There's just a lot here. There's a lot here. And I can't encourage people enough to play this game because there's so much here. So if you really like political games and you really want to actually play a game where you're going to be able to actually tackle different problems and stuff like that, that's going to be a thing. So, okay. Now, as far as the economy go, we're in a recession. We suck right now. The current situations are we have a weak transportation link, unemployment crisis, tax evasion, stagnated production, and decreased trade value. So yeah, a lot of problems going on. The economy of Swordaland can be called as an emerging market economy thanks to President Alfonso's efforts to privatization and his promotion of free market economy. However, the current situation is on the reverse. The economy is shrinking, and the privatization efforts led to the rise of powerful oligarchs. High unemployment, lack of quality infrastructure, and unequal levels of development remains as problems that haunts the Swordish people. So again, that's going to be a problem, and you're going to have to try and fix that. So, or profit from it. Do whatever you want. Military. So we have active policies, compulsory military service, which basically means that you're conscripted. Swordish General Staff. The Swordish General Staff is a military planning body comprised of the top generals and Gendarmerie under defense. The Gendarmerie is an armed law enforcement organization which maintains security and public order. Now, of course, we don't have stuff like that here in the United States. I mean, most police forces have SWAT teams and stuff like that, so we don't really have a need for a Gendarmerie. I think in France they have certain things like that. France, Spain, most European countries have certain things like that. So the thing about Swordaland that you will notice is that there are some things that kind of you can see as having similarities to the United States. There are certain things that you can see as having similarities to Israel, like with Tarkhan Sol. I can see kind of a similarity between him and Netanyahu to a certain degree. There are certain things where it's similar to England, how you have the MPs, but I think most countries have MPs, unlike the United States, where we have senators and congressmen, which are basically the same thing. And they have proportional or semi-proportional elections, whereas we have a winner-take-all system and stuff like that here in the United States. Anyway, so current situations. We have experienced generals, so that's a good thing. The Swordish General Staff consists of several experienced generals. Internal security jurisdiction. The Ministry of Defense has the right to exercise security inside Swordaland due to the Gendarmerie. That's another thing that's very different from the United States. Like, you're starting to see that here. As everybody know, we have riots going on all over the country right now due to the situation with George Floyd. But our military can't operate on U.S. soil. The National Guard can be activated due to state of emergencies, but we just can't be like, oh, we're going to send the Marines in or something like that. Whereas because the Ministry of Defense has a right to exercise security here in the country in Sutherland, and they also have the Gendarmerie, which is basically the military police to a certain degree, or a militarized police department, except it's on a federal level. Here in the United States, they have military police that I think they can be activated, but they can only act in order to assist or things like that. They can't act in order to literally hand out tickets and stuff, which is what a Gendarmerie would typically do. Like, they can literally act as a police department. They can't do that here in the United States. But yeah, we have a little bit different of a situation here in Sutherland, so which is the main focus here. We have a large reservist pool. The military has a large reservist pool to draw from in a time of war. Military interference in politics. The military actively interferes in the political landscape using influence and power. I don't think I encountered too much of this, other than the fact that Tarkon Sol was formerly from the military. Most people are formerly from the military, so you can kind of see that issue here. I don't really think you have that issue too much in the United States, other than the fact that, like, well, yeah, you do have the military industrial complex. That's a issue for another time. Again, want to focus on Sutherland here. We also have outdated military equipment. Decades-old equipment in the armed forces is negatively affecting the combat capabilities. So I'm sure this is going to be something that's going to be brought up again, because again, you do have an unruly neighbor that you're going to have to deal with. Welfare. Let's see. Welfare in the country, the active policies we have is the Renan Welfare Principles. What is that? I don't remember reading this. Get there. The revolutionary welfare principles laid out are part of Swedish governance, but are being questioned. You have voluntary vaccinations. For decades, Sutherland adopted a voluntary vaccination policy, allowing the citizens to choose for themselves and their kids to be vaccinated or not. So that's pretty much what we have here in the United States also. Current situation. You have an overburdened welfare system. The welfare system has been overburdened due to a lack of funds and political mismanagement, causing the system to crack. You have a low-quality rural healthcare. Rural underdeveloped Sutherland suffers from low-quality healthcare services with little to no hygiene, causing illness and death. Jesus. Inaccessible rural education. Accessibility to education remains a huge issue in rural Sutherland, with schools long distances away from small villages and towns. I definitely can understand that, because I live in the deep south, and I remember there was one school, if I'm not mistaken, that was in a part of the state that was like at least about a good 30 or 40-minute drive, and it was about the only school in that town. But it was a very small town. But that just goes to show you just how far you have to go sometimes for an education. And the other part that was really bad too about our education system here in the state was that our county school system actually was comprised of like 3 or 4 other counties in our school system, because those counties were so small. But it also caused an overburden of our county school system's funds, because of course you had to deal with all the schools in that county plus like 2 or 3 other counties. So, and they were all a part of our county school system. So it just caused a lot of issues. And I think that's still the problem now to this day. But you typically see that, I think, in a lot of places here in the United States, where the county's school system tends to have less money than the city school system, because the counties either have more school systems to deal with, or the city just has more funds because it's the city. So that's the case where I live right now. Like the city school systems, they have a lot of money. They have very nice schools. But the county as a whole has a lot of problems. So there's also a lot of private schools around here too. But anyway, back to the fictional problems. We also have good urban institutions. The developed urban areas of Sutherland have well-funded welfare institutions. So yeah, once again, you have the cities, they have good stuff. You have the rural areas, not so much. Inconsistent curriculum. The difference between certain governments have caused serious inconsistencies in the curriculum taught in Sutherland. Now, I don't think that's something we have here in the United States, but we do have inconsistent curriculums, because Like, I remember when I was in high school, I went to a county school system, and the county school system, if the county that I was in and the school that I went to, if you took advanced classes, they basically were the equivalent of regular classes if you went to any other school system, because our school was so poor, basically. Whereas if you did advanced classes at those other schools, then it was a whole different story. And you know, you could go to the universities and stuff like that. Whereas like my high school, if you wanted to go to university, you had to take advanced classes, and then you had to pray that you turned around and managed to get a scholarship and things like that. Because that was about the only way you were going to have a chance in hell of actually going to college. So most people just turned around, they went to school, did their graduation exams and stuff. They went to the community college, did 2 years over there, and then they went to college. So that's essentially what I did until I dropped out. Story for another day. Anywho, on to the Order of Suzerain. So with the Order, our status is waning. We have corruption. Suzerain suffers from widespread corruption, creating systematic inefficiencies and damaging the law and order. Surely we don't have such things like that in the United States. That's not a problem at all. Dispute with the military. The Ministry of Interior is in serious legal dispute with the Ministry of Defense about who should control the Gendarmerie forces. Again, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a gigantic problem later on, but we'll see how that can be tackled in the full game. We have illegal immigration. Suzerain has not decided how to handle the increased immigration, leaving loopholes in the system that tend to be exploited. Again, that's definitely not a problem in the United States at all. You also have organized crime. Dangerous crime gangs like the Coronelli and the Skinner cartel are conducting organized crime activities and evading the law. So yeah, you have a lot of problems as far as order goes, and it's only going to get much worse. Then you have diplomacy. They are a member of the Alliance of Nations. The Alliance of Nations is the global organization that maintains peace, security, and cooperation among nations. So if I'm not mistaken, I think the Alliance of Nations is not necessarily a kind of like a reference to the United Nations. It's more of a reference to the League of Nations, I guess you can say, because this is kind of, yeah, this is kind of around the same time as that. So you also have OMEC, the Organization for Markopan Economic Cooperation, simulates economic progress and increase continental trade. So definitely not a reference to OPEC or anything like that. So, well, that's more of petroleum and stuff like that. Anywho, current situation, Romberg Expansionism. The expansionist doctrine of Romberg in the last century has caused a highly volatile situation on the Markopan continent. So, yeah, there's this country called Romberg. Now, every country on here so far that I've brought up, they have some type of real life equivalent. This is the only one that I can't think of that has a real life equivalent, but I can think of an equivalent that it does have. So let's go to our lovely little codex here and look at Romberg. So Romberg is a constitutional monarchy led by Queen Beatrice Livingston. Situated in the cold north, Romberg is known to be a very powerful land power in the Markopan continent. While living standards aren't bad, the same can't be said about the civil rights and political freedoms of the citizens. The Queen is respected as the main authority, even though a symbolic parliament exists. The Rombergians are regarded as cold, stubborn, but proud people who defied the Markopan Empire in the past. Nowadays, it increasingly finds itself at the center of international politics and territorial disputes due to a more expansionist policy. The recent years have indicated that Romberg might be warming up to Arcadia, but this might be part of a bigger ruse. While this is seen as a move by Arcadia to counter United Cantana's influence in Volsland, others say that Romberg is seeking to become the third global power. Some historians even suggest that Romberg had a major influence in the Wayland Civil War, but this fact is disputed. Visitors of this nation are generally hypnotized by the beautiful looking tundra and the different animal species that are only to be seen in this region. The economy heavily depends on heavy industry. Two of the three largest firms are arms manufacturing companies, while the other is an aircraft manufacturer that, like the other companies, exports all around the world. The primary worry of the citizens of Romberg is an illusion of foreign threat that is out to get them. As many say, things can get dreary up north. Now, it took me a second, but the only thing that I can think of that this country reminds me of is like a mix between Belka from Ace Combat I can't think of the other country that was in the last Ace Combat. But if you remember, Belka, one of their main things was that they was always kind of starting trouble with other countries, but also their main economic thing was that they were always ahead of the curve as far as technology and things like that goes. So that's what I thought that was kind of interesting, that it kind of reminded me of Belka, but it also kind of reminded me of I think it was called Arcadia. I think it was Arcadia. Was led by the queen, or I think the king before her, but yeah, it was led by the queen, and they ended up starting problems, but then you find out other things. Anywho, I'm not gonna spoil that for people that haven't played Ace Combat, but great game series. This is also another reason why I want to play this game, because like Ace Combat, it has a very rich world. So yeah, that was the only thing that I could kind of say was it kind of threw me off, because every single country on here seems to have some type of real world equivalent, but this didn't. But then as soon as I saw the queen and the whole heavy industries and arms manufacturing, I was like, ah, yeah, I can feel the Ace Combat seeping out. So anywho, on to Markerian Imperial Legacy. Let's see. You gonna show back up again? You're not going to show back up again, are you? Oh, there you go. The traces of the Markerian Empire surrounded Marcopa, and while some remember the good, others do remember the bad. A lack of allies. Sworderland lacked strong allies to secure its independence and prominent role on the international stage. It's an influential Olmec member. Many economic experts of the founding Olmec members were of Swordish descent. Thus, Sworderland is a key member. Immigration question. Increased immigration and the nationalist reactions have created a great dilemma on how to solve the issue. Experienced diplomats. The diplomatic corps of Sworderland educated some of the finest diplomats who have done well in the past century. So yeah, that is basically an overview of the country right now, but these things will change as you go along. So you will make certain decisions that'll turn around, and it'll change some of these other ones that'll ricochet. Other events you just won't have any control over, but there are many events that you will encounter in this game where you might do something as simple as give a speech, and that's going to ricochet, and it's going to affect certain things. It's going to affect certain people you talk to. It's going to affect everything. But again, it's crazy just how much there is in the game. But yeah, that's the country overview. I won't get too much into this, but this is the political overview. So this is your cabinet here. You will see all of these figures at some point in time. I think so far the people I've seen in this demo was Peter Vectern, Elias Graf, Simon Hall, Nero Morgana. I think that's Isof, Lankia, Lucien Galade, Sierra Walda. No, I haven't seen Sierra Walda. And I think I might have seen Gus Manger. Yeah, I've seen Gus Manger also. But it also is broken down further. You have the different factions. So you have the Old Guard, the Oligarchs, and the Reformists. The Old Guard refers to the soulless from the old administration who defends the status quo and promotes conservative politics. Some claims that they established a deep state that controls the state apparatus. Key figures: Orso Hawker. Orso, the leader of the Supreme Court, and has established links with many in the administration. So again, if you're trying to turn around and reform the country, you're going to have to deal with the Supreme Court, which is going to be a bit of a problem here. But you'll see how that plays out later on. You also have the Oligarchs. The Oligarchs refer to the few powerful elites who gain their wealth from buying cheap state assets during the privatization efforts. While they hold a vast amount of wealth in the country, they also have direct connections with foreign businesses. Walter Tusk is a key figure. He's a spokesperson of the Lothberg Group, which controls a huge part of the economy. So again, that's going to be a problem. And then you have the Reformists. Refers to the main wing of the opposition led by the PFJP, which calls for democratic reforms. The term is sometimes loosely used to describe all of the reformists who are against the status quo. Franz Richter. Friends is the leader of the PFJP and slowly becoming the face of the major united opposition. Now, I do remember reading his article, but I can't remember if he was the one that was involved in that whole sex scandal or whatnot. I don't think he was, but I do remember that there was an opposition figure that got caught up into that. And he seems to be the most popular opposition figure. Now, there's the legislative part. So as you can see, there's a breakdown of the party, a breakdown of the legislature, how many seats you have. There's the Grand National Assembly of Sutherland. Gloria Torrey is the Speaker of the Grand National Assembly. Of course, there is a thing for that. You have the leaders of the Assembly. Franz Richter is the leader of the opposition and chairman of the PFJP. Kazaro Kibner is chairman of the NFP. And you'll find the NFP is a little different. They are a little different, and I'm surprised they actually have that many seats, but it's a volatile time. But yeah, I can understand. The NFP is the National Front Party, and if anybody follow politics know anything about National Front, they are a party in France. They're very well known for their right-wing conservative politics. Yeah, he's basically the same thing, except he's probably far more to the right. Yeah. But then there's also Monsoon Leak. I didn't even notice him. I don't even remember him being mentioned at any time. He's the leader of the Independents. So you have the breakdown. We are part of the USP. We have 130 seats. The PFJP has 70 seats. The NFP has 40. And the Independents have 10. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think that one of the big things about this game was that you're going to have to work with the Reformists or one of these other factions if you want to turn around and basically change the Constitution in any form or fashion, because you need, I think, 166 seats or 166 vote in order to amend the Constitution and change it or make any changes to the Constitution. So the first option that you're going to end up getting is working with the PFJP. And they have 70 seats. So that'll give you a grand total of 200 seats to turn around, or 200 votes to work with, and more than enough political power. However, I guess if you really want to, you can turn around and work with the National Front Party. And you're going to see that Casaro has his own ideas of what he might do. I don't know if you'll like some of those ideas, but you know, if you want to play that route, then surely you can. I do like playing all types of routes. I don't really care one way or the other what your political persuasion is, but honestly, I do like being able to play either side, because you just don't get to see that. Most of the time in games, you get punished for not choosing certain things or having certain decisions that you made or whatever. Whereas me, I like playing certain games where you can literally play as bad as you want. Prime example, and if you ever play Hearts of Iron 4, they have the expansion Kaiserreich, which is just, it's a ridiculous mod that people have made. And it has so many different ideologies, and you can play it in so many different ways. You can make America as, you know, free-loving America as you want to. You can be the American Empire. You can be a communist America. You can be a fascist America. But again, there's the choice. You can play it in so many different ways. But again, that's still a military game for the most part. Whereas in this, you're playing in politics, and you can actually be as far to the left as you want, as far to the right as you want, but there's still a story. So again, I just like the fact that you can play either side, because by God, I am not a fascist in any form of fashion, but still, I do like the option that I can go either way, and I will definitely play either way just because I just want to see it. So I want to see just how far they let me go. And of course, I do love playing the, you know, tyrannical asshole every now and then. Judiciary. And you can also see the Judiciary and where they kind of form. So there are, of course, 11 seats. And you have it broken down to the Old Guard with 5, the Centrists with 3, and the Reformists with 3. So right now, the Centrists pretty much, the Old Guard has it. And of course, with the Chief Justice, that makes it even worse. But yeah, it's kind of a bit of a problem. So I actually didn't know that Nia Morgana was a member of the court. I didn't realize that, because I think here in the United States, you know, you have the Supreme Court, but once you're appointed to the Supreme Court, you're on the Supreme Court. You can't be a part of anything else. She's the Minister of Justice and Law, which basically means she's like the Attorney General here of the United States, but she's also a member of the Supreme Court. I didn't know that, so that's kind of interesting. Heron Garasi, just as a part of the old guard. So yeah, I didn't even know this. Because again, I didn't really bother these menus too much, but that's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. And of course, if you want to make some notes, feel free to take notes here to, oh God, to help you remember important points throughout the story. But yeah, there you have it. So there's a lot that you can turn around and do. So I'm going to go ahead and end it right here, and I'll go ahead and really start delving into the game for the next one. If you like the video, please like the video, subscribe it. If you want me to make certain choices, or if you want to see certain things, I'll be more than happy to do it. Just let me know what you think. If you want me to read all of the different lore entries, I'm more than happy to do it. I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't want to do it in this video because I'm pretty sure this video is already over an hour long or something. But again, if you want me to turn around and do all the little lore context and stuff like that, I'll definitely be more than happy to turn around and do it, because I really have enjoyed this game, and I'm more than happy to play in different ways and stuff like that. So let me know, leave a comment if you like the video. Again, like it. If you like the things you see on this channel, feel free to join us and watch more stuff on the channel and subscribe. Do whatever you like, do whatever you feel. So thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.